possible. Here with the answer are two such lawmakers with a plan to strip $105 billion in funding marked for the implementation of Obamacare. Joining us now are Minnesota Republican Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann and Iowa Republican Congressman Steve King. Congresswoman Bachmann, Congressman King, I know you guys are busy. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on together. Congressman King, to you first. We quoted you in the opening saying you are prepared to have a confrontation with the President and the White House on this. But are you prepared for a confrontation with the leadership of your own party in the House of Representatives on this?
Well, Judge, I hope it doesn't come to that. I'm taking my position, laying out the strategy. I've done that for a year and a half. I laid out the strategy to move a discharge petition, to bring out a repeal. It was our language, actually, that was passed in the repeal, H.R. 2. I wanted it to be H.R. 1. It wasn't. That's fine, because we needed to cut off the funding. That's also part of the strategy. Now the question we have before us is, are we willing to fight? And I don't know that the answer is yes to that, but if it is yes, then there's no better ground to fight on than this CR, to shut off this funding and let the President and Harry Reid figure out what they're going to do with that.
Congresswoman Bachmann, the CR is a continuing resolution. It basically lets the government operate for the duration of the CR. The one we're under now is for 2 weeks. They're talking about another one for 2 or 3 weeks. So let me make sure I understand this. The proposal that you've offered with your colleague, Congressman King, is to insert a simple 1 or 2 line paragraph into this continuing resolution that stops the implementation by stopping the spending of money on Obamacare. Question, will John Boehner, the Republican Speaker of the House, let you and Congressman King make that amendment and permit the House to debate it and vote on it?
Well, that's the question, because it is our opinion that if a person votes for the continuing resolution, they're essentially voting not to fight to defund Obamacare. It's that simple, because as we are speaking right now, socialized medicine is being implemented in the United States courtesy of the $105 billion check that Barack Obama has to spend. That's why, thanks to you alerting your viewers and also to your viewers picking up the phone and calling members of Congress, we're seeing a crack here in Washington, D.C., and member after member now are starting to make public statements saying they're joining Congressman King and myself in voting no on the continuing resolution. This is good. We're gaining momentum now to vote against the continuing resolution, because, again, a vote for the continuing resolution to fund government is a vote not to fight Obamacare. We're gaining more support.
Congressman King, unless the continuing resolution contains in it the language that strips the $105 billion from Obamacare, then, of course, you'd be for it. The goal, as I understand it, is to get that language into the continuing resolution. That's a political goal. You basically have to twist the arms of your own Republican leadership.
No, that is true, Judge. And going into this with the big CR, the one that we debated for 90 hours on the floor of the House, I tried every avenue to get it written into the bill. I would have asked them to bring an amendment before the Appropriations Committee, but we didn't have a committee meeting. It was written and sent to the Rules Committee. I went to the Rules Committee and asked them to protect my language from a point of order, and they refused to do that. And so I offered it on the floor, knowing it would be struck down on a point of order, to make the point that this is a solution. It's the best solution that we have, and we have to reach that political place to be able to get the leadership to agree with this. We just discovered a new number this morning, and it fits in within the $105.5 billion.
What's that?
And that's the automatically appropriated funds for FY 2010. That's $18.6 billion that's put in for FY 2010, and you add to that the $4.95 billion that is part of 2011. We're at $23.6 billion that Obama has to use to implement Obamacare if the House does nothing, if we're not able to cut that funding off, as Michelle and I are working to do.
Because, Congresswoman Bachmann, all of that funds and the arcane ways in which the President was given the power to spend them were appropriated and authorized by Obamacare last year in that 2,700-page monstrosity that people barely had the time to read, much less understand.
That's exactly right. And we know now, Judge, that for almost a year, for 50 weeks, a majority of Americans, not conservatives, not Republicans, but a majority of Americans of all political persuasions want us to repeal the government takeover of health care. We're here because we want to do the will of the people. Overwhelmingly, this is almost a year out after the passage of this bill. And remember, Speaker Pelosi famously said we have to pass the bill to know what's in it. Now we know what's in it. All sorts of money, all sorts of government takeover, and President Obama's administration has written over 6,000 pages already of new rules and regulations. This is a very bad bill, and we need to take our leadership and all of our members and do everything we can to fight now to defund Obamacare.
Congressman King, are we witnessing a potential civil war within the Republican Party? Obviously, lowercase c in civil and lowercase w in war. For example, Congressman Michael Grimm from New York City, the only Republican from New York City, I believe said this morning that we can't shut the government down, and Congressman King and Congresswoman Bachmann know that this language is not going to get into their resolution, and we've got to pass the continuing resolution to keep the government going. I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, but I'm basically asking, are Republicans lining up on both sides of this issue and firing verbal salvos at each other? Not at Mrs. Pelosi and not at the president, but at each other.
Well, there's a little bit of that going on, but I think it's a long ways away from a civil war within the Republican conference. We're having good, healthy discussions with the leadership. We sat down with Eric Cantor for a full hour on Friday and went through a lot of the details of the strategy. So I don't feel that tension between leadership and me, and I don't think Michelle feels it either. But there is a little bit of sniping going on, and to the point, we can't shut the government. We don't intend to. We have provided the resources to keep this government functioning in a fiscally responsible fashion while we're cutting it a little bit. That's the Republican position. It's Harry Reid that's talked about shutting the government down, and we should remember, he is the mouthpiece for the president now. Right. Harry Reid is the guy standing up and shielding the president from the responsibility that we need to put on him. If this government shut down, it will be the president telling Harry Reid, okay, fine, we think we can win the debate with the American people. I think they lose that debate.
But Congresswoman Bachmann, if Speaker Boehner will not allow you and Congressman King to even get this language to the floor to debate it, to even offer ideas in favor of it, to force Congressman Grimm to state his opposition to it. Isn't he running the House much like Mrs. Pelosi ran it, with an iron fist, the way leadership wants it, without respect and deference to people whose views disagree?
Well, a decision has to be made by the leadership what sort of bill or amendment they're going to put on the floor, and that's their prerogative as leaders. What we're saying is that we believe that the language that we're trying to put forward on this amendment is reflective of what the American people want. And more, Judge, we see that there are more and more of our colleagues in the House of Representatives who want this language put on the bill, because like us, they believe that the time to take a stand is now. And so our question is, will President Obama and will Harry Reid be willing to shut the government down so that they can grow their huge bureaucracy of Obamacare? Because after all, that's what Obamacare is. It's a huge government bureaucracy. It's not more health care. It's not more doctors and nurses. It's a bureaucracy. If he wants to shut government down so that he can build a big bureaucracy, they're going to lose on that issue.
We only have a few seconds left. I just would like a yes or no from each of you. First, Congressman King, will you vote to raise the debt ceiling to allow the president to borrow more money, no matter what promises accompany that?
On promises, no. I'll be a no on that, Judge.
Congresswoman Bachmann, same question.
I've already been public, and I'm a no on raising the debt ceiling.
All right. We really appreciate the two of you joining us. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann from Minnesota, Congressman Steve King from Iowa. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
The showdown between Tea Party, small government Republicans, and their big government colleagues, as you just heard, is spreading. But how big will this get? We have some answers next.
You can now join Judge Napolitano online at foxbusiness.com/freedomwatch and take part in the live chat during the show. Simply click the live chat button and join your fellow freedom fighters.